going on? Coach Luka here with my man Hocevar. If you can say that really fast, shoot me an email, send me the recording, and we'll send you a gift card or something. That's hard. And it looks like I'm supposed to be the one squatting, but he's going to be the one squatting. So what we're going to talk about today is like this last week, we got a couple of guests come in, jump into our classes, and we're coaching the squat. And we coach the squat a little bit differently. So that's what I'm going to break down with Roby today, is a couple of coaching cues that most people don't do when they're squatting that will help you improve your squat, like have a better, smoother squat, a better groove is what we call it. And even back in the day, you've probably heard about like this very hip dominant squat, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with this. Like it's not an evil squat, it's not horrible. But for most people, whether it's our athletes or general clients, this is probably not the best way to go about it. And I'll show you what I mean. So think a bar's on my back or front squat, whatever it may be, and I'm instantly driving those hips far back, right? Meaning very hip dominant. You've probably heard of this before. Hey, don't let the knees fall too far forward. It's going to hurt your knees, and all this type of crazy talk, right? So if you look at me from the side, you'll kind of see this squat pushing far back, almost, feel it on your heels. And the thing is, many people are quite extended. Or used to play basketball like me, and if you see looking at it from the side, he's got a little bit of a, oh yeah, right? So you can see how he's really extended, meaning he's kind of like leaning back. A lot of basketball players are like that, and overactive. I would say low back, kind of resting on the joints here, right? So if you take a guy like this, and he's how tall? 6'3". So he's 6'3". He's a pretty tall dude. So and you put a bar on his back, and he's very, very extended, and he doesn't have great shoulder range of motion. He's going to be extremely arched starting off, pushing his hips back, and you can see what happens here. My low back is crazy arched, right? And once I get to a certain point, you'll see that butt wink, and a lot of times the butt will tuck under, right? You don't have a good core position. So what we tend to do is do a couple of coaching tips that smoothen this out and make the squat cleaner. And a lot of people feel very, very good real quick. We'll be like, oh, my back is hurting when I do that. I'm feeling my upper back. And so this is a different one. So I'm going to have a little bit of squat, just on the side. Just do a regular squat. Make it a little bit more kind of hinge. Okay, there we go. Right, and you can see he's got really, really long femurs. But if he's pushing his butt way far back, you can actually kind of see where he's losing his back. Go slow. Right about there, he starts losing kind of that position, and he tucks under. You guys might be able to see that. So one of the things that a lot of people, will use to clean up the squat is a goblet squat, and we love the goblet squat. But I'll show you why sometimes even the goblet squat is not cleaning things up. And I'm gonna have Roby do just a regular goblet squat. Same thing. Go with it at a little bit of an angle. Let's go like this. Bam, there we go. Just do your regular goblet squat. Good. Now stand up. Good. Now he's doing a pretty good job with this. Now what you'll see a lot of times, go do another squat. And at the top, come back up. There we go. You'll see this, where people are just resting back, right? So their core is not engaged, their lower back is working too hard, their knees are locked out, right? So as soon as they lock out the knees, they kind of lean back. Okay? Put that down for a second. Right? So even though, once again, the goblet squat is a great exercise, but it doesn't mean that it automatically looks perfect, right? And people will still extend and rest at the top and kind of muscle it right here, right? So one of the ways that we change that up, and first off, before we do that, I'm going to make Roby do kind of a bodyweight squat and show like one of the things we teach that kind of seems counterintuitive right off the bat. Now, I'm going to have him face just a little bit more like this. Okay, cool. Now, as far as stance goes, and we're not going to go into a ton of detail about the stance, but you want to be about shoulder width apart with feet 5 to 12 degrees out. Now, the reason I said I'm not going to go deep into the stance is because it really depends on the hips, right? Whereas, we go into a really wide stance and then try to squat low. Right? You can kind of see, that's actually not bad. Now go really close together. Right? So if he goes really close together, he's not really going anywhere. If he goes wide, it's pretty good. So he has, I would say his hips are pretty wide and retroverted, but he has a good squat if he goes about shoulder width apart. Most people do pretty good shoulder width apart. I have, I would say, pretty variable, a lot of variability in my joints, so I can go very close and squat low pretty good. I can go really wide and still squat below parallel, right? Now there's people that, you know, you'll see that this is the good stance for them. As soon as they go wider, they can't really go low. It's just hip anatomy, right? There's nothing wrong with you. Not everybody can get ass to grass. That's just the reality of it. And Adobe's pretty good about shoulder width apart. So what we do with clients is we help them find the stance with body weight, or with just a lightweight. Just what feels good, right? Without even looking at your feet. Hey, what feels good? Does that feel a little bit better? Does this feel a little bit better? Right? And whatever feels better, like that's what we'll do. Even different foot stances. But like I said, we're not going to touch on that a lot today. We'll do that in a separate video. Now, what I'm going to tell Adobe to do is as he starts squatting, I'm actually going to tell him to soften up his knees at the top. There we go. Now, you can kind of see his knees are soft now. They're not locked out. Most people start with locked out knees. Soft knees, and as soon, now lock out the knees real quick. Okay, now watch his core. When I tell him to soften up the knees, you'll see what happened there. Soften up the knees. You can see his trunk, so if his knees are locked out, when I tell him to soften up the knees, his core, or should I say his hips come underneath the core. They're nice and stacked, right? Which, that's what we want. We want him to be using core in the squat, because when we do this, you lose the core, and it doesn't support you well. So he's going to go soft knees, and as he's squatting down, I'm actually going to tell him to drive the knees more towards my hand. There we go, and coming back up. All right, so let the knees fall, or should I say knees first, and coming back up. Do one more rep, knees first, and coming back up. Now, for most people that say, whoa, what's going on here? But you can see that when you go soft knees and knees first, I want all three things to move, to kind of move in unison, meaning we're getting some ankle dorsiflexion, a good ankle dorsiflexion, knee flexion, and hips. Right? All three smooth in one, I would say one smooth motion. And that was what happens. It redistributes the force and the weight really nicely. Quads, glutes, hamstrings, versus here going far back, low back, hamstrings, glutes maybe, but like too much low back, okay, and no core, right? Where here we get obviously quads, core, glutes, hamstrings, everything in unison. It's much smoother, and that's I would say that's a healthy squat, right? Now, once again, if we're thinking, powerlifting, and we're thinking like a box squat, doesn't mean it's bad. The question is it right for that person? And for most people, this is a much, much healthier squat. And the way that we can kind of clean this up a little bit more, once again, you saw Obi move through the knees, and because you used to have knee issues, right? Yeah. But that doesn't hurt you at all, right? Yeah. Okay, perfect. And the thing is, we want that person to be as upright, because the more upright that person can be, the more, I would say, you can stack, I would say, those joints nicely. And so we're going to do one or two things. We can go with a pretty light plate, and what Obi's going to do is he's going to lock it out and just push it out. And you'll see from the side, I'll just turn you to the side a little bit. There we go. Okay, so bring it out in front of you and then just push it. There you go. And what you can do, let's bring it back again. All right, same thing, push it out again. And you can see what happens is, as soon as he pushes, his rib cage goes down and back. Right, so now we get out. Right, so if we're arched, push, rib cage goes down and back. And now same thing with those soft knees. Let them fall. Keep that in front of you. Good. You can see way less tuck in his low back right now. Way less. He's able to stay more upright. He has no tuck in his low back that he had earlier when he was pushing forward. And even if we kind of were able to do that little line, you see how much more upright he stays. Okay? And everything is moving much smoother in unison. Okay? And break. Break. So that's like a plate, 5 pounds, 10 pounds. A lot of times too, if we're doing it in a group training session, somewhere circuit-based, we might do it with a kettlebell and just not lock it out completely, but still bring it out. Okay, so I'll just have, we'll be doing just a couple reps. So we could be working with a KB. There we go. Keep the elbows a little bit bent. Nice. And we'll bring it in and out. And that way, same thing, as soon as the weight comes out, the core has to work, right, to resist that flexion. So now we're getting some more abs into it. And that's a healthy squat, right? And break. So right there, we got two tips that will clean up a lot of these, I say, very, very hip dominant squats that for the majority of people are just not as, I would say, as healthy, especially over time. You know, somebody will say like, well, what about the #1 powerlifters? And like, first of all, we're going here for health, not maximum, you know, 0.1% in the world. You know, and even in those cases, a lot of these things will help to get somebody out of bad patterns, right? And then once we clean up the patterns, then we can use things like box squats, you know, back squats in some cases. Like I said, I'm not saying that any of those variations is bad. I'm just saying there's the right tool for the job, right? And if we want to get somebody to squat really nice, have a smooth squat, get out of pain, use all the muscles, like durability, longevity, we're going to use different things. Whether that's a double kettlebell squat, a goblet squat, a plate squat, safety squat bar, front squat, right? We have a lot of sandbag squat. We got a lot of variations. Back squat. So for many of our clients, we don't even go to the back squat. We get them a lot stronger with different squat variations because they're not shooting for that. Now, another thing too, and it's the last tip that I'm going to kind of do with Roby here on the squat is pulling himself into the squat. So what you'll see with a lot of squats is that people will just drop down. Whether it's, like I said, imagine this is a boot camp, a group training session, and it's circuit-based, and people are just doing, you know, air squats, just, you know, for a long period of time, just kind of dropping down, right? Or imagine now it's a weight, it's a front squat, and people are dropping down and bouncing out of it, right? Once again, maybe that has room for certain times when we're trying to get maxes, but majority of the time, we want control, right? And so, well, Ruby, just do a quick squat like you're dropping down. Do 5 quick squats here. And you can see he's kind of just dropping down, bouncing out of it. Of course, he has enough strength to be able to control that. But now let's look at him pulling himself down. So imagine that you're using your hips and you're pulling yourself into the squat and then pushing the world away. And that's what we really want, right? We want that control. He's pulling himself down. Pull yourself like you're swirling yourself down. Now push. Good. Let's do 2 more. Pull, 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 pull. And push. Let's go 1 more. Pull. And push. Now for some people, they might not understand that or feel that. So what we do is go on a drill. So just go down on the ground real quick. Lay on your back. And turn towards me real quick. There we go. So what I'm going to do with him is he's going to extend his feet and kind of dorsiflex his toes. And I'm going to have him drive those knees in. So start pulling that. Push your hands into the ground. Keep pulling in, pull in. Push the knees out a little bit more. Good. Keep driving. We're going to hold it here. Good. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to start pulling and you start letting go slowly. There we go. All right, just do 1 more rep. All right, pull him in. So now he's using his hip flexors, right? That's what we do. Drive. And back. And break. All right, stand back up. So now he kind of gets that feeling of, remember, he had to use his hip flexors to pull himself in. Okay, on the floor, on the ground, it's a lot more. We kind of ingrain that into the brain. So now I'm going to have him pull just like he was on the ground. And you can actually see it's much smoother now, more control. Pull yourself down, There we go, and break. Right, because a lot of people actually have weak hip flexors. People stretch their hip flexors a lot, but many hip flexors are weak, and that's why we can't pull ourselves down, especially past this 90-degree position, okay? And then our low back, we'll say, works too much and gets overused, and the joints get overused. So this is a great drill, and there's a lot of different drills that we use for that. So it could be, like I said, some FRC ISOs where we may be standing against something, bringing that knee up, good posture, working the isometric above that 90-degree angle. Right? So there's a lot of things that we can do for that. But the key is just understanding how do we clean up a squat? What are some good tools that we could use to make it better, faster, and just understanding what we want out of it. Right? So these are just some of the cues for a healthy squat. And at the end when I was saying push the ground away, one of the things that we use a lot, this is the last tip I'm going to give for this, because it gets used in a lot of things that we do, is feeling your whole foot. So when Roby's like standing here, I want him to feel the big toe, the little toe, and the heel. So it's like a triangle, like a tripod, right? So as he's going down, many times, there we go, push that whole foot, feel the whole foot, feel the edges of the foot, and then push it back up. And do one more. So feel the edges of the foot, and now push back up. There we go. Great. So you'll see on squats many a times, you know, you've heard this push the knees out, and then you'll see the roll of the ankle, and the toe comes off the ground, and then you're having knee issues and some hip issues kicking in. You'll also see either heels coming off the ground, but one of the things that people don't talk about is having the front toes come off the ground. So once you got that very hip dominant squat, and you shift all that weight back, notice the curling of the toes, right? This is also not a great thing. I want to redistribute the weight equally, and so when I feel the edges of my foot and that tripod, now I equally distribute and push through that whole foot, and my hip is in a better position, and it's just a much better, healthier squat. So with that said, a couple of things to try and just see the difference. And once again, you know, each person is a little bit different. We coach off of what we see versus just a generic checklist that anybody can do, but these are great things to play around with and improve your squat, especially these are things you can do in warm-ups, these are things you can do, you know, prepping to work up to maybe your squat day training session, and you'll just get a lot more out of it, I promise you. If you got any questions, hey, hit us up. We're gonna be doing more of these coaching videos, just cleaning up form, getting more performance out of it, and keeping you healthier and more durable for a longer period of time. Coach Luka, I'll see you next time. Peace out.